He's got,
Yeah.
So weird how they
And
do
they
Whack
didn't
the
get to
third.
be billionaires by being generous.
Yeah.
No,
It's so
no, they're
it's so
ruthless.
crazy how often we get,
They're ruthless.
you know,
Um,
we've been having so many conversations with people that have
so,
resulted in absolutely no applications, and then
so
we
you
haven't
know,
heard anything
I
from these people.
I
and
watched the
They
downward
show up with
spiral
a bunch of documents.
until our division or our operating company was, you know,
Yeah.
basically disappearing.
He wants to talk about
And that was part of Siemens,
you-
you know,
how
a
did your
huge global
conversation with them go?
corporation. Yeah, I worked for a couple of big companies. I worked for ES, which was GM owned us.
Oh, yeah, I know that, of course, Ross Pro and all that.
Yeah, Ross. And then I worked for a couple of smaller companies. I worked for a family-owned company, a food distribution company located out of Arizona. And that was a good company. But the founder had died in a helicopter crash. And I joined after that, and it was a really good company to work for, but they ended up selling to a big, you know, U.S. Foods.
Yeah.
I worked for Beaumont,
Well,
and I was at Beaumont for 3 years, and you know, they ended up getting acquired by Spectrum, and now they're Corewell. You know, I saw so many of that. I had a knack for joining companies just as they were about to take a turn for the worse.
For tonight, I have no changes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agenda as submitted.
second.
Moved by Commissioner Barberina and supported by Commissioner Pop to approve this evening's agenda as submitted. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. And are there any changes to the minutes of January 15th?
Mr. Chair, I had one question. On page 3 of the meeting minutes, this would be the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th, 6th, the 4th and the 6th line down. The sentence reads, "The idea of updating the zoning ordinance to include a dark sky ordinance created much discussion, with most of the commissioners concerned that commercial is handled differently than residential." I thought what we talked about was that commercial needs to be handled differently than residential. But I wanted to check with everybody else and see if that is what you all recall.
That's what I recall, A, and B, we were gonna prioritize and focus on the commercial, getting commercial right, as opposed to residential.
That's my recollection as well. I think we're in general agreement, so.
Okay, I had no other changes.
Anyone else?
The only thing I have is under approval of the minutes. It says ayes all with Commissioner Dorchevitz abstaining. So did Commissioner Ikes, because he was not yet on the planning commission
Right.
for the December 11th meeting.
I believe you attended by phone.
Phone only, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep,
all right,
that was it. On the 11th,
Yeah.
I called in.
okay. Pardon?
Is it changed?
Yeah, you have to, that Commissioner Ikes abstained because he wasn't on the commission. Plus you can't, if you are attending by phone, you can't vote.
Right. So it's
I
going
don't know,
back.
what was the date of your appointment?
That was like I was appointed, I think, on the
7th or 8th or?
the 10th?
10th, oh,
The
okay.
meeting was the Wednesday, the 11th, right?
Yeah.
And I called in on the last
Yeah,
half.
you did, yeah, but
Yeah.
you can't vote when, so
Right.
he was here, but can't,
I hadn't been sworn in by Mrs. Jefferson at that point.
yeah,
It happened a week later.
yeah, okay. All right, anybody else with anything?
So, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes as amended.
Okay.
Support?
Moved by Commissioner Barberina and supported by Commissioner Boyd to approve the January 15th, 2025 minutes as modified, corrected. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. Okay, the first, let's see. One member of the public here. Did you have anything to say? No, nothing, okay. All right, then we'll move on to miscellaneous business, the MITC verbal update with Gary Roberts. And Well, Laura, you want to have a preface to this?
Certainly. Evening, Commissioners. Laura Haw with McKenna. Gary Roberts is here in attendance to present an update to the MITC, the Michigan International Technology Center, which is a joint venture between Plymouth Township and Northville Township to develop that area. And Gary has been instrumental in MITC since really its inception, maybe going back a decade. So it's great to have you here. You are deeply involved in the different developments in both Northville and Plymouth Township side. So we appreciate this update from you. Thank you.
Sure, yeah, perfect.
Gary knows where all the bodies are buried.
Yes, the chairman was kind enough to thank me for volunteering to come, and I told him I volunteered to come right after Laura told me to come, so. Just for our on the record.
So we're clear.
But thank you, yes, I'm Gary Robertson. I've been involved with the industrial development out there from Sheldon West and even on the other side for more years than I care to count. But I'm functioning as the planner and coordinator for the joint venture, which has become the Michigan International Technology Center. And just for those who aren't as familiar with it, I'm going to drop back for 2 minutes and give you a little bit of history. Let's see if where's my arrow here?
It got off the screen.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So in the early 1900s, if you were a bad guy in the city of Detroit, you were sent to a work camp, which was based here in Plymouth Township. The colored areas on this map total about 800 acres total, gross. And in which case you were sent to a work camp, which was located here in some rudimentary buildings and early on, even some tents. But what you did when you got there is that you worked all of the fields that were these orchards and cattle and farm crops and so forth. That's what you did, and the food was sent back to the city. That evolved over the years to, in the 30s, a full-on medium security prison building, which I'm sure you remember how ugly that was there on the south side of 5 Mile. And that evolved into a state correctional facility, and then that facility was closed, was added onto with a bunch of outbuildings in the back behind the original concrete block prison building up front. That evolved to a state corrections facility. Then, what you might know or might not know, there is an area here along the very east side of the project that was landfill. So if you were in the 30s and 40s in the city of Detroit and you wanted to dump your refrigerator, you could come out here and throw it in the hole. No big deal. Well, spin that forward. The underground migration of methane gas took over the prison buildings, and they were closed in the early 80s because of high level of explosive gas inside the buildings, and then they just sat there. The then state representative, Kurt Heisey, got an appropriation to demolish all the buildings down to grade, not below grade, but just to grade. Got an appropriation to do that, and that was done. And that was really the turning point in the marketing of this property, because for years and years you would drive someone down along, why am I having trouble with this arrow thing? Where is it?
Time's up.
I can't even see it really. Oh, there it is. It keeps moving around. Maybe this isn't going to work. But you would drive someone, west along 5 Mile to try to show these big properties that we had available out there, and they would hit that prison site and say, no, this is not the image I'm having for my company. I'm not coming here. So there was a real turning point when those buildings finally came down, even though environmentally they didn't really make any progress by taking the above grade stuff, but visually they did. Environmentally, there is not industrial waste out there like you think of the real highly toxic stuff. There's a hole full of stuff. There's heavy metals in the soil. There's a mile of tunnel with asbestos pipes in it. There's all kinds of things, mostly of which are concentrated here on lot 15 in this area where the real development was. The rest was primarily agricultural. Anyway, the property then, we started, as Laura mentioned, at least a decade ago with a handshake kind of marketing agreement between Northville Township and Plymouth Township to figure out how to get something done here. And the idea morphed into what you now call is the Michigan International Technology Redevelopment Authority, which is an actual unit of government which is empowered to collect tax increment finance, and put in and clean up sites and put in infrastructure. That entity is currently in place and functioning. The Redevelopment Authority is a 5-member board. The supervisors from each town, one additional person from each town, and then Dr. Glenn Cerny, who's the president of Schoolcraft College, make up the board, the voting board for that. And it's really working, very nicely. What I wanted to do is just walk you quickly around the map and show you what's happening. This site number 1, which as you recall is the old women's prison there at Beck and 5, is not technically part of the tax capture district, but it's in all of our marketing literature because it has some residential options, but it has some commercial options. It has a hotel. It's something that makes for a well-rounded brochure, okay? But legally and beyond that, there's nothing. By the way, you have at your place, so I grabbed a few of the marketing brochures we have left. Jennifer Fry and Laura Haw and I originally wrote a site readiness grant, got $100,000 from the state to develop the website, some branding things, some marketing brochures, so it's been very good. I'll tell you about some other successful grants as I move through this. But I thought the cleanest and easiest thing to do would be to just sort of walk you around the map and tell you what's happening. So I'm going to pass on this because that's not really in your purview. The very first pickle out of the jar, if you will, was a company called John Ding. John Ding is a Chinese rubber grommet manufacturer that built an R&D center. And we thought, boy, we are right on the right track marketing-wise. That's basically the same target as all the other light industrial and high-tech stuff that you guys know very well that are here in Plymouth Township. After that, the marketing of the sites to the high-tech thing, it continues in earnest, but we saw the market sort of fall out in favor of the much larger box-type facilities, which you've actually seen come before you in a couple of different spots. The build-to-suit high-tech things that you saw along Halyard and Brembo, and we would love to entertain those, and we chase every one that moves, but they're just not as much out there as the other bigger box facilities. But the Michigan International Technology Center was always and is the focus. We want to bring jobs, we want to bring employment, we want to bring investment. Of the 800 gross acres, there's about 560 or so buildable. There's some large areas of wetland. The Johnson Creek, spills off onto the land in terms of floodplain and wetland. But truly, we could get 4 million feet of what I'll call platform buildings out there if we developed all the upland areas there cleanly. So that's still a meaningful investment for something that has contributed zero to the tax rolls for the last 100 years. I mean, nothing, not 1 cent, because it was all government owned, right? So that's the whole notion behind this thing is doing that. So John Ding is there. They actually used half their site. They have 4 acres left that they could redevelopment. Site 3 is we affectionately refer to as the gun range site, because if you'll remember when you're driving down 5 Mile, there's kind of a big cliff here along the edge of John Ding, and that for 50 years or however many, the police and the security people would test fire guns into that hill for target practice. Northville Township spent about $450,000 remediating the lead out of there, and it is cleaned up to that extent there. And so that site is about 7 acres, and it's on the market. Sites 4, 5, and 6 are the small ones. There's probably, we show site 4 is bigger, but there's probably an acre or so of upland in there. Site 5 is about 3. Site 6 is about 7 acres of upland along the stream there. They're compromised, obviously, by shape, which has slowed them to the market. And we're also reserving the corners, if possible, for something a little higher and better use that feeds it. Obviously, we could have put, and Laura and Jennifer both had said, we don't run any gas stations, and we don't either. We don't want that. But we could use some amenity things. We could use a restaurant. We could use a daycare center. We could use a clinic, the kind of things that, industry feeds to. And that, we're sort of holding out for that if possible. There was a tech user on 5, but he didn't finish his due diligence and bought an existing building. Anyway, these particular properties have nothing really strong on them at the moment. From the road frontage standpoint, We got a $10 million appropriation from the state, and I'm sure you've been out there, but 5 Mile is, the old rickety 5 Mile 2-lane road is now a nice 3-lane concrete road with a center turn lane. And the state funded that 100%. It's 99% done. There's some cleanup shoulder work to be done in the spring, but that will not come off the tax rolls. That will not be funded by MITC. That was funded by the state. So thank you for that. We also have a federal grant called a carbon reduction grant to redo or to do a real intersection at 5 and Ridge. As you know, there's no traffic light there. But there's a carbon reduction grant based on how, was surprised to learn this myself, how much traffic actually backs up there in the late afternoon and people going, west, going home. So we qualified for that and got that. That will resurface the intersection for several hundred feet either way and put in a brand new signal. That will, as soon as the weather breaks, that will go in the spring. We also, under the original grant, was able to pave Ridge Road north to the stream in a concrete 2-lane road. You might remember also that the county put a topping course on Ridge south of 5 Mile, all the way almost to Halyard. It looks really nice. Unfortunately, it's really just a kind of a top coat. Don't hold your breath on how long that lasts, but at least it looks new for the moment. And we'll get there. We ran out of money with our grant to do more, but that's on the list to redo that to all Class A road from Halyard all the way up to 5 Mile. West of there, we got nothing. And I say we got nothing. We have no money to do it, but we're going to need another about $11 million to get over the tracks, over the stream, and get out to Napier. That is the grand plan. But I get to tell you, as we sit here today, that isn't unfunded. However, it's all drawn up. The engineering is completed on that, and we're continuing. And that's how you get yourself into the quote site readiness, shovel ready status, as you have engineering and you have approvals from the county and so forth. So we're there, and we're continuing like we did in the first phase. We're continuing to chase money to get that second phase done. But that's the sort of infrastructure. The water main, as you know, is currently along the south. Your water main is along the south side of 5 Mile there, kind of ends in the middle here. The Meyer project will take and connect it to the loop here. Then this project here will bring out to a new proposed water tower that's out there, which is expected to be TIF funded. Northville brought their water main through here, cross under the tracks, and down to 5 Mile, and then it's going to ultimately loop back, and that'll complete their loop. We got another grant to bring the sanitary sewer. The Watua Interceptor runs on the east side of Lot 13 here and runs north actually into this wetland area, park area, into the town. Right now, though, it's been completed, and there's a line that crosses under Ridge, under the tracks, under the river, and stubs up over here. And then these users on the remainder of Lot 9 and Lot 10 will have a pressure sewer that'll feed into that thing and dump into the interceptor there. So from a growth standpoint, the utilities are pretty well at hand as we speak, and most of which have been funded by grant, or Northfield's put theirs in for cash and are expected to get their money back through the TIF. The TIF has about 25 years left on it. In other words, if you came in, it was a 30-year TIF. Now, it's been going for a while. If you came in next year, you're going to only be able to collect your reimbursement for the next, say, 24 years. So the clock is running to some extent. It's important that we keep the pace up here as best we can. Anyway, moving right along, we talked about these small lots here. Lot 7, much to everyone's surprise, was interested by Toll Brothers, and they're putting in 100, I'll call them 55 and up type units that are residential in oriented. They're duplex buildings. They're very sharp looking. They have only a limited access here off of Ridge, and then they are also paving the missing connection on Ridge that's currently dirt to feed their project. So they'll have pavement from both ways. That is been sold. They own it, and it's under contract. Lot 8 is tough. Lot 8 is really tough because this wetland thing might be exaggeratedly small, but they have to cross over. The only way to get there is to cross through 7 to get to 8, and there's about only 15 acres of upland over there. Plus, it's got the train track. Plus, now you're starting to encroach on the landfill, so from a marketing standpoint, it's a bit of a challenge, but we'll continue to work it. Lot 9 has gone, where's my arrow again? Lot 9, I lost my arrow. There it is. No, I don't know. Lot 9 has gone very well. If you have been there, you'll know that Northville Lumber is at the very west end, which is really a gift to us from a planning standpoint because it essentially shields us from the landfill. It is, if you haven't been in there, it might be the nicest lumber yard you were ever at, ever. I mean, it's really nice, and he's done a great job of building a really nice building. It fits in there well, plus shields the rest. That's obviously occupied now and contributing to the tax rolls beautifully. Right to the east of that, on this big lot 9, which is 80 some acres, a Plymouth Township company called Verita has picked up, I think about 16 acres, 15, 16 acres, and is building a nice 2-story building, an office and engineering building, as well as some warehouse for small parts. And then they have a bunch of property on the back or on the north side to store their trucks, and they have some very expensive trucking equipment because they put in fiber optic cable and that kind of telecommunication stuff. They have also closed and own the land. Next to that, there is a 22-acre site available. We're sort of big game hunting with that, looking for a large user. We had it under contract with a developer who did not find a large user and has sort of thrown in the towel, but I have 2 backup offers that I'm talking to Northville about right now for other new projects. That will sell because there are almost no large 20-acre industrial zone sites with utilities anywhere close to us here. So we're gonna be a little bit selective about that one, but that's coming. East of that, a developer, his name is Steve Schaefer. Schaefer Development has a multi-tenant kind of a tech thing planned. He is under contract there are a series of smaller modules, I want to say in the same kind of target market as Spinnaker Center, which there on Helm Street, that 3,000 to 6,000 foot unit or even smaller is what he's designing there for a complex there. And then I took the very point here and decided it made much more sense as opposed to just leave that. And we put in common detention for everybody on Lot 9. So there's a big common detention pond here, which then, of course, outlets into the stream. That has also already been constructed. It was constructed as a part of the lumberyard project. Skipping across the street now into your neighborhood, Lot 10 is owned by a company called Jones Development. I know you've seen plans for that so far. And the market intelligence is that he's going to move forward on his 700,000 plus square foot spec, and I think he's worked out the things with you guys, and he's content to move forward on that. That will bring the water main project, and I know Mr. Fellrath has some ideas about expanding that tank to service the bigger area here, and that'll be, as I understand it, that Jones is going to fund most of that, get their money back through the TIF. And then I think there's some water and sewer funds will end up being involved with the expanded tank. I'm speaking a little out of school on that one because don't quote me exactly, but that conceptually is it. But there's a nice big project here. 700,000 sounds like a lot, but this is 100 some acre site. So you can see how much of it is just going to be the way that it's going to be. It'll be a very natural prairie looking thing for a long time. But I'd love to see him move, and I'd love to see him get that building on the tax rolls as quickly as possible. As I know everybody knows, Hillside Investment put in this Ridge 5 corporate park, and I was very excited to see the road go in, have some small lots available because we didn't have any. And then, of course, you know how the politics of the racetrack thing went. So my understanding is that there's a developer now that is close to having it under contract with the racetrack people who own it, and is going to spec a building and use the road as planned. Again, these are facts according to real estate brokers, so you got to temper everything I'm telling you right here. But that's what we're all hoping for, is that they spec a project and we have some small lots to sell because there really aren't too many other ones. Your Choctaw distribution thing is right here. The easterly piece of this thing has been talked about for the hydrogen, nil hydrogen project. Honestly, the ones that we've talked to before, the alternative fuel companies just seem to be slow. And I think that's just a function of the market right now. They're just wondering, they have, the state and the feds and the Department of Energy and everybody has thrown everything but the kitchen sink at them. And I think they have them assigned to Plymouth Township. But if the company doesn't push the button, the company doesn't push the button. But they're slated to be on this part here. Now, I know your distribution center is talking about some additional outdoor storage, and I certainly wouldn't wait for Nell Hydrogen, but it sure would be nice if they had the kind of investment that they're talking about. The very first project in, and the lead brownfield project, was at Site 13, where they do have a site plan approved 60,000-foot tech building, but they're concerned about whether the market is there or not for it. But Signature is marketing that, and be nice if something would come of it. But that's where it is right now. It's in a planning and design hold, not moving forward to my knowledge. And of course, everybody knows about Meyer. Meyer came along and is basically occupying the central portion of this here. There's a big piece of this lot 15 which did not sell to Redico and is being retained by the Michigan State Land Bank just because of its contamination. Now, I would say to you, there is a legal access route to 5 Mile to get to that site. And if somebody gets very adventuresome and wants to do some deep foundations and some mitigation in there, you could see that develop at some point. But Redico, who bought the rest, does not intend to develop that at the present time. And I think they have an option on it, but they're not going to. Meyer is very close on their engineering approvals, and my understanding is that they're going to start their infrastructure issues in the spring. As I mentioned early on, they have the worst possible site. They are going to recover money through the brownfields for remediation, but they're still millions of dollars short from what they need. It's very complex in terms of having to pull soils out. You can't haul them off site. You have to place them in areas where they can be utilized for other things or compacted. There's vapor intrusion issues there. As I mentioned, there's a whole bunch of miles of tunnels over there that loop way down here and loop around it. All have to be remediated as a part of that project. What I know you will see is that Redico still has 30 acres of what I'll call industrial high-tech land, and I have been involved with several designs for local companies to go on those sites. But you'll see eventually, hopefully soon, a cul-de-sac road that comes down and terminates about where that one shows, and these sites will develop for a light industrial purpose. There is no other good use, except in the Meyer project. As you know, that road sort of arcs off of the intersection. At this point, for this Acadia Ridge Road, they're coming out to that point and putting in a signal. That's going to result in some people that usually travel with Meyer, like a credit union. There's a hotel in place. There's a couple of small to mid-sized retailers that like to be near them. If you look at some of the other Meyers, you see who likes to move around with them. You will see some additional retail requests come to you for these small pieces that are around Meyer, I think. I know, because I've been talking to some of them. They're not quite ready to apply yet, but they're working on documents that'll do that. So
Is that on Northville side? Is that where you're talking?
No, I'm talking about on your side,
on
this this Redico-owned property here.
Okay, perfect, thanks.
There won't be a lot, and I say a lot. They're all 1 or 2 acre little things. Maybe there's 3 or 4 of them. If we could get a nice hotel and a credit union, that would serve well the rest of the businesses out there. I think I would be happy to, and even some of these small retailers here. But I think you'll see that coming along. But in terms of the funding and in terms of the sort of market momentum we have, it isn't exactly, and I will admit to you and to the supervisor, this isn't exactly what we had envisioned a decade ago, because then Metro West projects and all were just humming along and were filled, and we were going to do more of that. We're just not seeing as much of that as we did. We're seeing some, but we're not seeing as much. So anyway, I don't want to take up all your night, but that sort of walks you around the block. There is an initiative for the Johnson Creek running through the Drain Authority, which is going to restore some of the habitat all the way up to the 6 Mile Fish Hatchery thing that runs all the way into Washtenaw County, which goes off this map, but the thing crosses into Washtenaw County there. The Drain Authority there has a grant and has spent a bunch of money on engineering trying to get that creek to have better, there's a fish that's protected in there that they're working to save, and they're trying to get the thing to flow better so that it doesn't flood. So we've been cooperating with them and trying to give them, if they need access or they need, storage or construction areas, MIT is certainly cooperating with them. So, Mr. Chairman, that walks you around the block. Is there anything I could
Couple
answer about that?
questions.
Yes, sir.
Hey Gary, did you guys consider or putting in a roundabout on the corner of 5 and Bridge?
I did. And I really, really wanted to. But at that time, when we were doing the engineering for that, there was none. How many there were in Wayne County? None. Did the Wayne County establishment at the road place want any? They wanted none. Now they're going to have one up at 7 Mile, but they wouldn't have, originally when we were doing the design, they would not even entertain the discussion.
And the parcel numbers or lot numbers, those don't have legal significance as being separate parcels. That's for marketing purposes, right?
That's right. To be honest with you, I made all those up.
Yeah.
They're just for the map, for the brochure. And what we've been telling people is, when you, at least in Northville Township, they're not trying to not spend money. If you come in to buy Lot 9, if you process the lot split and do the surveys, we'll give you a couple grand off of your closing, because they're not speculatively doing that kind of work. So no, but they end up being all splits. Now your Lot 10, he'll have a lot of splits he'll leave on the table. Redico probably will not have too many left, because they probably get 3 or 4 more after Meyer, and that'll be it. So hopefully those will all come due by meets and bounds. I don't think they'll plat. They might condo, but they're not going to plat.
And then the MITC, all of this land is considered to be one brownfield, right?
Yes. And so the first one in was this, actually Lot 13, and it's very convolutedly complex, because then the next guy in comes in, and they have to, and we have a PhD, his name is James Harless. He's a retired SME guy that is handling all the technical side of this thing. But what happens is, Lot 13, they got a brownfield approved, which they haven't exercised because they haven't done anything. But everyone after that is an amendment to Lot 13, because that's the way the state wants it. It just makes it crazy complex. But he's there sorting that out. So like when you come in, the lumberyard, all of this was orchard, so he has arsenic in the soil. It just means he has to move it off, store it, build a berm, put it back, put grass on it. All of the engineering is covered. All the environmental surveys and engineering can be covered, and recapture roll through to the developer on that. If you need infrastructure like they're going to need on Lot 10, he should be able to recover most of that. Meyer, as I said, is going to run out of time and money. They can only take so much. The MITC gave them as much as they could while preserving money to go back toward roads and utilities, but they're going to run out of time and not capture all their money over the next 20, whatever it is, 5 years or 6 years left on their project. So that's how the reimbursement thing goes.
I play around with Zillow. Where's an 82 acre piece of land for sale for $2 million?
Well, there are 2 parcels that were about 80 some acres. Lot 9 was all one parcel, and then this big triangle was all one parcel. That's the way Northville Township acquired it 20 years ago. From there, then it has been processed with splits.
It says Plymouth, though. It doesn't say Northville.
Commissioner Pop, I think that might actually be on 5 Mile east of Beck. There is a narrow lot there, you can almost see it, that we approved a plan for RV storage a number of years ago. And they came back last year with an extension or amendment to change that. Now, that piece of land shows up in Zillow as being for sale.
82 acres?
No, it's nowhere near that amount.
Yes, there's a little one, like
Yeah.
1 or 2 acres.
Yeah.
I know that, but
Okay.
there's some 82 acre thing.
Well, originally this 14 was 101 acres. This was about 80, I think, gross, or 85. It may be reading some of those older numbers. This is almost 190, this lot 10. And I want to say that Redico has about 66 gross before the Meyer was spun off. I'm not sure 100% where that came from. It would be 80 if you included the state land bank piece.
So there's currently not sanitary sewer out to 10 yet, right? Or there is?
No, there isn't. Well, there is. The boring and all of the pipe that gets it to the interceptor, which is here, is stubbed to there. They're going to have to pressure sewer to get to that point. So we could sitting here today, we could say that 10 is serviced by sewer, but they have to put their system in under a pressure situation to pump to that thing, to pump under the pressure under the river and up into the interceptor.
Is the west end of this at a higher elevation than the east end, or is it about the same?
It moves up and down a little bit. Obviously, the general drainage is toward the stream from all these pieces.
Yeah.
So the answer to your question is yes, it's higher here than it is at the stream. But from a sewer standpoint, it's not enough fall to make it. It's going to have to go by pressure, especially when you get to the point where you're going to go way under the stream and under the tracks.
10 was the property that was owned by the city of Detroit, right?
That was owned by the city of Detroit. That was the original DeHoco, Detroit House of Corrections. They never sold that piece until recently. That piece was from the original prison in 1900, whatever it is. And they never sold it until recently. It's only been sold one time. And that's to Jones via, through Plymouth Township.
The ancillary uses for the Myers, the credit union, the hotel, et cetera, would that require us to rezone the land, or would that be carried under the zoning we've already approved for Myers?
I think you're going to be looking at some special uses that'll come before you. And the public hearings and all that go with all of that.
Because we had so much fun with the Meyer.
Yeah, yes, I know, I was here.
So, to kind of try to be proactive to that point. So you said that the 5, and I've avoided 5 in that whole construction business, so I haven't been on 5 since they probably started the thing.
Oh, you
So
should, check it out, it's cool.
I will check it out now.
It's really nice. It's well done.
So it's a 2-lane, 1 lane in each direction, and then the center turn lane.
Right.
So how was that decision made? You've been to some of those public hearings, people are saying, there's too much traffic, the road can't handle it. How was that determined? Under the current use, or did they think ahead?
No, there was there was originally, OHM Advisors is the consulting engineer on this. They had done it projections based on the amount of buildable area. And the one sort of misnomer about the 3-lane road is that each site, the idea is that there's nobody waiting for turning. So either you're in the left turn lane waiting to turn into your project, or you're in a decel lane going into a project. So like in Meyer, they're going to have to build big, long decel lanes so that the through traffic always keeps going. But I don't think we're going to see enough density to warrant anything beyond that in the future. I mean, it's been functioning for years and years as a 2-lane road. Now it's going to be really 2 lanes plus the turn lane, plus excel and decel at every user. So I believe it'll be fine.
So the road that it's almost finished being constructed now, is at the I don't understand all the roads, the A and all of that. But I remember you coming to a meeting once and you talked about Ridge Road and that what level of
right. Well,
engineering
right now,
had to be done to that road.
Right. As we sit here today, technically, Ridge Road all the way to Halyard and to the mobile home place is not Class A rated by the county. Now, as you remember, because of the landfill and other things, the county has essentially ignored that forever. But we, as a design standpoint, said, no, we can get by with a 2-lane road here because it doesn't go anywhere. There's never going to be a lot of north-south traffic on Ridge Road. But we do want Class A all-weather weight restricted standard to service your big development on 14, which has to exit out to Ridge, and this Ridge 5 development, which has to exit out to Ridge. So we need that, and Halyard, which doesn't have to exit out to Ridge, but does. You know, you can go out the other way, obviously. But so we thought, from a road weight standpoint, it makes sense to engineer all that, and it is in fact engineered all the way from 5 to Halyard as Class A, but not currently constructed as such. The only piece that is this little leg right here. And we're never gonna see much industrial traffic up there at all, because it doesn't go anywhere.
So there's that no trucks allowed north of 5 Mile. How was it they were able to pull that off?
How were they?
Yeah.
I think they just posted it.
They just
Honestly,
put a sign up? That's what we think.
I think so. I really wasn't a player on that. But I know that they're trying to keep trucks off of 6 Mile, because when you get north on this picture, obviously it's all residential. There's no commercial thing up there. They really want to keep the trucks off of there. We're going to end up routing them up there again. It'll be another 400 phone calls, because when they close, we'll have to close this off to pave over all this stuff, which means the only way to get to the landfill is to go around the block. And, oh, I can't tell you how much of a mess that is, but we'll save that. That's not going to be your problem. They can't go your way. They got to go that way.
Yeah.
Did I hear you say that Toll Brothers is going to go ahead and pave the remaining dirt part of Ridge Road?
Yes,
So
that's
it'll
my
be paved all the way
understanding.
to 6
Yeah,
Mile? Okay.
and it isn't really all that far, but yes, they are going to do that, because they can't market their fancy residential thing off of a dirt road. So
Good, okay.
they're stuck doing that.
Okay, good.
Is there an end date for the landfill? None, okay. Is that-
Not to my knowledge.
So we gotta deal with trucks rolling down there for forever, which doesn't help the marketability. The second one is, that road is in such bad shape, particularly at the railroad crossing on 5 Mile, as you're going from east to west. You literally have to go swing out of the way on oncoming traffic, dodge the empty trucks that are coming back from landfill, because it's that bad. Will that get repaired?
Well, eventually, the same cross-section will go all the way to Napier. And there's actually a dip in the road between Ridge and the tracks. They keep telling me they've got to build this up to get over. We're gonna narrow the road. I had to fight and fight. We're gonna narrow the road down to 2 lanes, because you obviously can't turn left over the bridge, right? So it'll taper in, go over the bridge with a new road, and then taper back out to handle the left turn lane. Because if we had to redo that bridge, we'd be sitting here waiting for another $10 million and just can't possibly do it. But that's what's gonna happen, is it'll be the same 3-lane cross section, except for right here at the bridge over the thing. And that bridge is in pretty good shape, I'm told, so they don't have to do anything to it. But that's the plan anyway. And then when you get out here, just short of this intersection, it's gonna taper back again, because it's only 2-lane out there in Salem.
So just getting that area repaired by the railroad, I think will help the marketability, number one.
Yes.
That corner lot, the northwest corner lot of 10, right, there actually is a ditch in there that's pretty sizable. I've hunted that field probably 100 times back in the 70s and 80s.
Oh, yeah.
Great pheasant hunting, back in those decades. So it's a good area, but for the most part, it is built up a little bit higher, but in that one corner, there is a ditch that's in there that's pretty sizable. Everything else does flow down towards Johnson Creek.
Right. And I think you guys wisely required them to keep some buffer along in there too. So that'll be really, that'll be nice and not impact it. I shoot out there at Western Wayne too, and it's a nice kind of a natural road. It feels different there. I'm glad you kept that.
To answer your question on the landfill, there's a website that's run by residents of Western Northville Township, mostly engineers, really well done, that tracks all of the issues there. They've got about 2 or 3 more years to fill that landfill, but then they own the land immediately north across 6 Mile, and they're trying to get approval to do that as an additional landfill, which has to come through Washington County. So there's lots to be decided on that. And it's certainly, your supposition is that it will continue to be a factor for some time.
You know that Northville Township is in litigation with them over the odor things and the blowing trash and that. So it doesn't make for a fun relationship to try to get anything out of them. But they really should be at the table participating in this road thing, because they're the people who are using it more than anyone, and will continue to do so as long as you and I are around chasing it. All right, sir, is there anything else I can tell you? In your folder there is my card. It's a little bit of there's a little bit of a Northville bias in there because we just recently located the Plymouth Township brochures, but we're going to have those available as well. They were lost in administrative change, but we got some back. Laura found them.
Thank you for a very informative presentation.
Okay, very good. So call me, again, through Laura, just tell me if you need something and I'll get it.
Okay, thanks a lot, Gary.
All right, thank you.
I was curious if the landfill is the landfill preventing faster development, do you think? Have people made comments on it or
Not
no?
anymore.
No.
It was, but, you know, now that we've got the lumberyard there, people can say, hey, this isn't the end of the road. I don't think it's limiting. It certainly doesn't bother Jones. Isn't gonna bother distributors there. I think the reach of western residential stuff, right? I can't imagine selling any more land residential. Maybe a little bit of a lot.
Thank
It's
you.
just too close.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, you as well. Okay, and we have the monthly report. Laura, did you have any comments on it, or otherwise, the commission can ask if there's any questions?
I have a question. And I think maybe I alluded to this last time, I don't know. I mean, it's a great list because it lists, you know, everything. Are these all the active projects? So once something's closed, it's moved out? Or if it stays on, maybe we can have a column that says like, you know, open closed or something, or?
Yep, these are all projects that are still active.
Okay. Okay, these are all the.
They haven't expired or they haven't been closed out and moved to the building department for construction.
Okay, so once it's closed or whatever, it's moved off.
Correct.
Okay, okay, then you don't, okay.
Having highlighted the changes is really helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah.
Laura, has there been any update on the apartment portion of the Elks property moving forward?
Not that we're aware of, but there may be some progress with engineering,
Within a year?
within engineering.
Oh, okay, all right. And any update on the Courthouse Grill property?
No.
I did drive by today, the old Purcell property, and I did see there's a truck parked in the middle of the front yard with survey stakes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it looks like something's going in there.
That was my question, is because it's still, isn't it still in there a lot split there? Is that the property we're talking about?
Yes, on
And
North
so
Territorial.
there's actually excavator there and there's dirt moved, so.
I missed that.
Yes, they're constructing a single-family home closest to North Territorial, where where the equipment is placed today. Their application for a lot split is for additional lots behind that would lead closer to the existing home, the Purcell home, to the north of the property. And that is unclear from the applicant if they are going to proceed or not.
Did Mr. Gonzalez ever give us an explanation as to why the original project never got off the ground?
No.
So is the Purcell house gonna be taken down still, or?
As of right now, there's no demo permit for it.
Is there land behind the house that someone could build on too? I mean, because it seems like a big enough lot, you could put a street and then you could have, you know, homes.
That was the cluster
plan.
housing that was originally approved, but that has since lapsed. They didn't follow through with it.
Okay. But is there land behind the house or not that much?
There is, it slopes down considerably, and I think
Okay.
there's some wetlands back there.
Okay.
Roaring highway.
In a roaring highway, yeah.
Not on your list, but just thinking in terms of our master plan update, the large piece of land north of North Territorial, west of M14, has there been any change on that? Any updates?
No, not in several months. Randazzo was interested in that property, but we haven't seen anything recently.
Which property, Tim?
It's It's on North Territorial, just west of M14, the north side. There's
Oh,
a
yeah.
big piece of land there.
Yeah, yeah.
That's high density?
It's zone multifamily
Yeah, right,
residential.
right.
Yeah.
A lot of wetlands.
And it does
Yeah,
have
it is.
wetlands on it, but there's a lot of it that doesn't have wetlands. So in my opinion, it's clearly developable.
Any other questions or comments from the commission? Okay, so we'll just, do we need to, I always get, should we vote on it or just say received and
It
filed?
can just be a receive
Okay,
and file,
receive
yeah,
and file,
no
okay.
action.
And the sign notice ordinance that you've put together a memo?
Yes, thank you. So as we discussed at the January Planning Commission meeting, right now, the township only has a policy in place, a longstanding policy that isn't formalized or part of the zoning code. It's not codified, to require a sign erected on the property when there is a rezoning application. And as we discussed last month, if it's the direction of the commission and the administration to keep that requirement, then the best practice would be to codify it, make sure that it's clear, it's written into the ordinance, and to expand upon it a little bit to clarify what's expected of the applicant for rezoning. We also discussed expanding that to cluster housing option projects and planned unit development projects, as those also require a public hearing. So in preparation for the meeting tonight, Maya and I have researched adjacent communities and what they require. So this would include Northville Township, Livonia, Canton, the city of Plymouth. And those are a chart comparing those different standards is listed on page 2, which Maya's going to go over in just a second. And then the last page of the memo will jump back to me, and I'll run through some of this draft language before you. Just a reminder, though, as a text amendment to the zoning ordinance, this would require a public hearing, and the language would, of course, need to be vetted by the township attorney. It would be a recommendation to the township board after the public hearing to approve this by resolution, and then it would be codified into the code.
So, so last time when we talked about our township's policy, there was a question about what adjacent communities require and wanting to make sure that we don't go wildly out of what, is normal in nearby communities. So this is just a kind of breakdown of the types of things that are required. And as you'll see, a lot of them are, you can check through. So all of them, have the same information across the top. This property proposed to be rezoned, the date, time, and location of a public hearing, and the current and proposed zoning district. Right now, our policy says that you should have a map and dimensions of the property to be rezoned, and 2 of the communities also required that, but 2 of them didn't. 3 of the communities require providing the name of the real party or property of interest that's applying for the rezoning. We don't currently require that. 2 of the communities list the proposed use of the land if the rezoning is successful. There's different types of contact information required, and some communities don't require contact information. Almost every community requires a 4x8 sign except for Livonia, which does a double-sided 4x4 sign. The location, and I will also actually note that the dimensions do also match what is normal for a construction sign that we have a standard for in our ordinance right now, which just specifies the area. In terms of location and placement, there's different ways that they say it. They get more and less specific in how far they should be from the property. we don't have a policy on it right now. There is some, we just said that it needed to be in full view adjacent to the road, because it's very specific to sites. Each community has a different rule about when it needs to be removed. We don't have a policy right now. We're suggesting 7 days. Some communities require applying for a sign permit to get this rezoning sign. I think that would probably add an extra step in the process. We do require a permit, I believe, for construction signs, so it wouldn't be unprecedented. But it would add another step in the process. And then there's another note about timing in terms of when in relation to the public hearing you need to post. And right now, the newspaper requirement is 21 days prior to the meeting. So yeah.
Right now, is it 7 days though, usually that people have the sign up, or is it longer?
It's 21 days is our policy, our written policy, I think, right now,
Okay.
which is the same as when
The criteria called proposed use of land if rezoning is successful, how's that different from the first category where it says proposed zoning district?
So, for instance, if someone was rezoning from industrial to commercial, they could be doing a car wash, or bad example, but they could be doing a daycare, they could be doing a, retail facility. So this would be specifically saying what they're planning on doing with the property when they rezone it.
So that requirement would actually be really helpful to the nearby community in understanding what the implications of the zoning change are, correct?
Well, you want to be careful with that though, because when you're rezoning a property, let's say rezoning it from commercial to industrial, unless it's a conditional rezoning, if it's just a regular rezoning, you're allowing any uses that are listed in your zoning ordinance under industrial. So it can be misleading because legally that property owner could, should that rezoning be approved, the following day sell that property to another industrial user, and they put a different use on.
Okay.
Right, I could see someone saying that they're gonna do something very mild. Then there wouldn't be a public outcry.
And
And changing
Yeah.
the zoning, and then we could get something completely different.
Okay.
Sort of similar to Spars when they came in, it was gonna be apartments and then some kind of, I don't know, medical care facility. We never could get understanding what that is. So, yeah, I think that would, it's misleading. I mean, if you just say what the zoning is, then people who are very interested could just look up the ordinance and see all the permitted uses.
And that would be the fact.
Right.
Yeah, okay, good.
So why not have the real party of interest listed?
Yeah, thoughts on that?
So this table on page 2 is indicated to show what the policy today requires.
Right.
Right.
So right now, that one-page handout that we provided in your packets last month, it doesn't require that to be provided.
So that's just the state as is, it's not a recommendation necessarily that we continue that way.
Correct.
Right. If you guys if that was something that you were interested in adding, we could
require it.
require it. Yeah.
I think it depends on, ultimately, which is on the next page, page 3. This is some initial draft language. What size you would like the sign to be, and that's just left by a blank by blank under 2A. Because then that kind of determines how much text can reasonably be put on the sign and read. One of the things that the township does today that wasn't previously done when this rezoning policy that we have today was created is that we do have the current projects list on the township website where that information is readily available to anyone. So I think that maybe is a more transparent way if we could just direct folks to the website or direct them to come upstairs and look at the plans. They have everything.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about having the name of the party on the sign. Because in
can
essence,
cut
it really
both.
doesn't matter
Yeah,
who's doing the development, because it can change the next day as soon as they get the zoning. And it could be really vague, Jones Development. Who knows what that is, or it could be something, say it said Meyer, and then you create a ruckus, but anything can change the next day after it is zoned. So I don't know, I'm hesitant to name the party, the interested party, but what does anyone else think?
I had somewhat the same reaction.
I agree. It could be like with Myers, it could be Redco. And then you get a Myers and people are going to, what's Redco?
Right.
You
yeah,
know, there's an example.
okay, I was just asking. I wasn't
I was curious
advocating.
about that too, yeah.
All right, recommend that we go through the draft language on page 3, kind of one by one, and see where the commission falls. Any of this can be adjusted. It's for discussion.
Before we go on the size on page 3, right, and the language is there, I think it's important to note that, number one, this benchmarking is very helpful, so thank you for doing it, right?
This is great.
It shows the present state. Canton has done the most development, probably in the last 20 years, of the 5 entities listed here, so, you know, I tend to pay attention to the guys that have done the most development. And they are erring on the side of transparency, right, on not only who, but what, right? And interesting enough, Livonia actually has a sign that's half the size, is aligned with Canton, right, on those two. So I don't know if having the name of who the purchaser is a good thing or bad thing, right? It'd be nice to talk to that, to find out from Canton and Livonia the pros and cons, right? I'd love to have the planning committee come back to us with a recommendation, and I would follow your recommendation, because you guys are planners, that's what you do for a living. The other thing I wanted to point out on this page here is City of Livonia has a sign that's half the size. It's a 4x4, right? And it looks like they're putting information on both sides. And it also looks like the sign is posted, like when you're selling your house, whether you're driving by this way or you're driving by that way, you can see it. Whereas what we do today is it's set back and it's this way. And if you're driving by, unless you're really gonna do turn your head a long way as you're driving by, right, and hopefully not go off the road or cause an accident either direction, it's harder to see with what we're doing today. So I wanted to point that out, that I actually like the fact that it was more of the real estate posting perpendicular to the direction you're going, so you can actually see it. And they did cut back on the map, right, that was on there, because you only have so much space with half the size. Another point, Dennis, was a great suggestion to go look at Northville Township at Beck Road at the northeast corner. That sign is set back so far. It's on a funky angle. The colors are bad. I never even noticed that sign, okay? And I've driven by that intersection, I can't tell you how many times. So that's as poor as I've seen anyone do what they're doing. But I actually like the fact that Livonia's been around for a long time, actually had the thought of putting the information on both sides and turning that sign instead of this way. That way, it just makes it easier to notice, and I try to err on the side of transparency, so residents aren't mad at the committee, they're not mad at the board of trustees, they're not mad at anybody in the planning department, right, that sits in this building who's really trying to do their best.
Well, it raises another point that I was going to raise up, but sort of ties into what you just said. And that is, should we, or are there any other communities that regulate that the color of the sign? You know, when I've seen them, they're mostly all black and white. But, you know, if they paint something light, nobody's going to be able to really see it. I'm concerned about the visibility of it and about font size. You know, because you just say, well, I have a 4x8 sign, but, you know, there could be a lot of white space around.
White on white.
Yeah.
Well, all of those things are great points, and we can discuss them as we go through one by one here.
On the Livonia sign, the way I read that, I was envisioning it, that it was kind of like a sign with one side angled this way and one side angled that way, which is much more visible and readable, in my opinion, than just something like this. So I guess my question is, what exactly is Livonia doing on a two-sided sign, the way you described it?
I I saw a picture of one, and to me, it just looked like a square sign that had, almost like a real estate sign, that was, perpendicular with the road. So it wasn't angled, it was just, flat sign.
The other thing on the color I want to add out, right, using our automotive background, right? The worst thing you could ever do is put a white sticker on something with black ink because it sticks like a sore thumb. You don't want to see the trailer tow stickers on the back, right? So GM very carefully used a black sticker with white ink because it's less noticeable, okay, from a craftsmanship standpoint. When I worked at Ford, it was a white sticker with black ink, stood out like a sore thumb. So did the frame that they were picking in the boneyard, where the sticker was this big and it was white with black letters. And I mean, the wheel well. So color is important, right? And if you want that sign to be noticed, having that white background, right, is probably the right approach.
Is that what people mostly do now? Black on, yeah.
Except in Northville, when you go by that corner, it was like purple, it's dark, with white letters, and it was just the execution was about a D-.
Where's that at?
It's on the northeast corner, 5 Mile back, and it's back, Bob, a good 80 to 90 feet at
I
least.
go by there all the time.
And you never noticed it.
If Dennis hadn't pointed out when I went home from the last meeting, I would have never noticed it.
I think that sign's been there for 10 years. I bet you if you look at the date on it, I bet you it's 5 to 10 years ago.
Okay,
All right, so on page 3, number 1, intent. This is setting the parameters for when the sign would apply. This would require that whenever there's a public hearing for a rezoning, a cluster housing option, or a PUD, the installation of a sign on the subject property must be provided at least 15 days prior to the required public hearing. And right now, I know we have 21 days, but I think 15 would be cleaner, as this is when the notice goes in the paper and it meets the deadline for the mailing as well, so everything is consistent. It's that 15-day mark.
That sounds good.
does this cover special land use as well?
No?
Is it something you think we should include? Okay.
Special land use, that would be like a drive-through at a restaurant too, right? So it'd be kind of overkill.
I think it would be overkill based on the township's code today and the amount of special land uses that are listed. So even like a daycare, some of the outdoor storage and industrial areas, the kickstart soccer, the pickleball, all of that would require special land use, signage, which seems overkill.
Opens up a Pandora's box.
And no one wants anything to change, so, yeah.
I like the 15 days.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. What paper do we post this information in now?
Records, paper that is designed
Like the
for
legal
this
news or-
purpose.
Yeah,
It is
the
the legal news.
That's what I was thinking,
I think
Yeah.
it's the Wayne County Legal News.
So it's not something the average
No,
Plymouth Township resident is going
that's
to read?
ridiculous. We have to publish things in publications just because you have to. It's archaic.
Yeah.
Yeah, the clerk's office publishes those, so
Very transparent.
We also do get mailed out and then we post them on the website. Just as well. But yeah, no, it's not great.
There's only so much you can do.
all right, is there any change to number 1, or is there consensus on that?
It's good.
I like it.
Okay. All right, number 2 is probably where we're gonna make some adjustments. So these are the sign requirements. 2A deals with size and placement. So this is where there's the placeholders here for if you wanted to still require the 4x8 or look at the 4x4 that's double-sided, or a 5x5 is another common plywood size if you wanted to make it smaller.
If we make it smaller, it's the same content on both sides, which means there's only half of half as much space to include the requirements, so if we require a map and some of the other things, I don't know if it would all fit.
Or if it could be readable from the road.
Yeah.
One thing to keep in mind is we are not recommending the map as part of this. It really depends on the size of the site, but when we have some of the larger sites, it's not real helpful with that scale.
That's a very helpful statement. Because I was questioning the map all along, right? And man, I'd love to see some of these 4x4s in Livonia, right? Versus the 4x8. I'd like you guys as independent people planners, right? Go take some photos side by side and send it, if you can, to the planners here, so we can look at them on A to B, right? On a simple 8.5 by 11, then I think it becomes obvious what to do, because I don't know what's right, right? I'm glad to find out that people are doing stuff differently, and I don't think 4x6 is good enough, right? Either 4x4 or 4x8, you know, dual-sided versus one is really what it comes down to me, and leaving the map off might allow it to be a smaller size.
It could also be a minimum of a certain size. Someone could always make it bigger if it were cheaper to get to make it 4x8 over a two-sided 4x4.
Well, you'll probably still buy the 4x8
Right.
and just cut it in half.
So then why not just have the 4x8?
Well, they sell the 4x4s. I mean, they've got them cut. That's a standard size at Home Depot, right? That exists. I just like to know from a functional standpoint, what is most effective being noticed by people driving by, right? We want to make sure people are aware and they don't get mad at, you know, Dennis or Tim or anyone who's been on this committee for a long time. You know, did we do it right? Have we been doing it? Could we do it better? And, you know, I just love to see what Livonia is doing with
Yeah,
the sign
it
somewhere.
varies, I think, on the parcel that, let's say, is being rezoned. You know, if it's on not a very busy thoroughfare, probably doesn't even need to be that big. But if you're talking somewhere along 5 Mile Road and a parcel is big for a Myers, then you want the larger size.
Yeah, if somebody's interested in it, they're gonna pull over, get out of the car and go look at it. They're not gonna, you
Back to
know.
what I said last
You can't
meeting.
copy
more
down
of
the
like-
information, the date, or,
No.
Right. I think it's just an attention getter that you're going to go somewhere
Yeah.
else to get the real details.
Yeah, you are, if you're.
So I think it just needs to be out there to say, hey, something's happening.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think a 4x8 sign, it's pretty noticeable.
It is.
I mean, it really is. I mean, I know what you're saying about having it like a real estate sign. You can, as you're driving by at 40 miles an hour, you can maybe, pick up some things on the sign a little bit better.
Then if it's a smaller sign too, it may be dismissed just thinking that it was a real estate sign.
Yeah.
Whereas these big 4x8s, it's like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, it's kinda
something's
hard to
happening
miss.
here.
It's pretty noticeable, yeah.
So what size are we settling on?
I'm in favor of 4x8.
I am as well.
So we could adjust that to say minimum size, a 4x8 foot sign shall be erected within the full public view along the adjoining road frontage, wholly within the subject property. The sign must comply with the clear vision regulations in the appropriate section.
So do the clear vision regulations in section 28.25 talk about type style or size or colors?
No, that's just the triangle that's created at the intersection if it's a corner lot or there's a
Oh.
driveway so that it doesn't impede
Oh,
vision.
clear vision for the
Traffic and-
drivers, for the
Yes.
traffic, okay.
Directions.
We're not specifying a location, we're just saying it needs to be outside of that intersection.
Okay, got
And
it.
then we're saying,
We could perhaps add something that would say the sign can be set back no further than 20 feet from the right-of-way.
I think that's good.
Yeah, I think
that's
that's
probably a good
smart.
idea.
Otherwise, somebody might put it at the back and they'll
It'd be more noticeable.
make sure nobody sees it.
Did you say 20 or
Brush.
30 feet?
20.
20. And what about like colors? Would we want to say that it's like black letters on white as the uniformity?
Yes, I think that would be good under 2B if we wanted to add a 5, that the sign must feature a white background with black lettering.
Yep,
Good.
I would agree.
Under 2A, the last sentence there, the sign must be placed on at least one post so that it must be elevated, right? The bottom of the sign cannot be located closer than 3 feet to the ground.
It'll be visible if it's 3 feet or above,
Yeah, snow or anything like that.
weeds or shrubs or whatever.
All right. Then getting into the specifics of what goes on the sign in 2B. The words, "this property is proposed to be rezoned," or similar applicable language if it's, "this property is proposed for a conditional rezoning." I suppose we could add that in as another example if you think it would be helpful. Must appear at the top of the sign in a lettering height of at least 10 inches. Somewhere between, 10 inches if it's a 4-bay would be visible.
Oh, yeah.
B2, the sign shall state the present zoning at the time of petition. Be the current. The sign shall state the proposed or requested zoning sought. This would be or cluster housing PUD. The date and place of the public hearing.
And the time?
Yep, the date, we can say date, time, and place. And then the sign must have a white background with black lettering.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Yep.
3, proof of installation. It is the responsibility, duty of the petitioner to erect and maintain the sign. The petitioner must provide a time-stamped photograph of the sign to demonstrate that it was installed with the correct information to the Community Development Department at least 15 days prior to the public hearing. So when they erect it on time, then they would take that photo and provide it to us.
So do we have a community development department here? I know there's a building department upstairs, right?
The Community Development Department is Maya and myself. It's the planning department. That's
Oh,
just
it
the
is.
name of it, yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, so you guys get to sign off on it.
Yes, we are on the second floor here at the township.
All right, wow, did not know. Was the name of McKenna's role here, so thank you.
That's the full name that's been used by the township, so we keep that. Then for removal, I think this is important to have in here. It's the duty of the petitioner to remove the sign within 7 days after the required public hearing. We could say to remove the sign within 7 days of the application's final approval, if it was something that went to the Township Board of Trustees, but sometimes those projects can lag on for quite a while, and I don't know if that's something that you want to stay up in the community for that long.
Right, because it could go, I could see it both ways, because once, say we approve it, or however it goes on to the BOT, that could take months to get to them, and then, or even longer. So if the sign is down, people might think that it was finalized. But on the other hand, people should still know that it's a work in progress.
Yeah, I agree with that. As long as it's an open application, why would the sign come down till it's been approved or denied?
Well, the intent of the sign is to be transparent about that there's a project going on, right, on this property. But it is primarily notifying for that public hearing with that date. So once that passes,
Yeah,
they're not required to update it to say when they'll be going to the board, for instance.
yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. There will be a public hearing on October 23rd and it's February 12th.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because we see signs hang out there for
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think of that.
Yeah, so I could see the 7 days after.
Except that if there's a delay or, we suspend it or we, forego to the next meeting, so you're expecting the developer or the builder or the homeowner to take that sign down and put it back up when the next meeting is.
It won't be foregone because when we have that public hearing, there has to
There
be.
will
a
never be
decision.
another public hearing, and then we
Unless
don't have,
something got
then they don't
messed
have
up.
to have a sign up.
Right,
Unless something really changes in the development,
right.
there's not a second public hearing.
If it's going up for a vote to the Board of Trustees, they don't have to have the sign up for that. They would, at that point, if they're tracking the project, they can track it on the
Yeah,
website or a
that's,
number of
that's
different
a good-
ways.
that's a good point.
I would propose adding some additional language that says that the removal, has to be removed after 7 days. I think it should say removed from the property. Because if you recall, we had one sign that was up forever.
Yeah.
And then we complained about it, and then the
Just
applicant,
knocked it over.
he just knocked it over and it laid there on the ground for months.
Well, Scar's now painted it white, so.
So
I could
think
guess
it's
who that
removed
was,
from the
but-
property.
I could guess who that was, but I won't.
A wise guy. It's good language, Dennis, I agree. That's their responsibility, find a way to store it, right? Wherever they put it, it's up to them.
Can
But not
definitely add
trash it
that.
on the
Know
ground.
that. Jeez.
And then number 5 is just to clarify that the township is also responsible, held to these same standards for any township-initiated rezonings in accordance with these standards. And that would only apply to rezonings. The township wouldn't be initiating a cluster housing or a PUD.
But how about when you redo the zoning map? I mean, and you change zoning, you'd put up a sign for that?
If it was township-initiated, you would have to, yes.
Okay.
So as an example, if we, as a board, recommended rezoning the Northville Road corridor back to single-family residential, that would have to be posted. Is that an example? Yeah, okay.
But changing the master plan or the future land use map, we don't need to put up signs.
Right. That's where I was going, yeah.
If it's 11 or more, then they're contiguous.
So do you have what you need? Or?
I believe if you find that these draft statements and the adjustments that we discussed are appropriate to move forward, then we could we still have time to schedule a public hearing for the March 26th meeting if you wanted to hold that then.
So at that point, would the attorney have reviewed or composed the official ordinance, or?
Yes,
Okay.
You mean a public hearing for the text amendment?
yes, for this. Mhm.
Do we have to put up a sign for that?
You have to publish it in the paper.
To the old rules or new rules?
Yeah, I think that sounds.
Would it be
good if we
helpful
get it,
would it be
in place as soon
helpful-
as possible.
Yeah, I think this is pretty straightforward and just we're codifying the existing policy and making it better and more transparent, so.
Laura, would it be helpful to include a drawing of what the new required information is on a 4x8 layout? Just so
Like an example.
we have an idea what it would look like in the public would for the public hearing.
Yep, we could do that.
Good idea.
Yeah.
This is good work, guys. Nice job on this.
Is there a way, is there a way that we have, or you guys would have a PDF or something like that you could send a homeowner or a business and when they're applying and needing to put a sign up, that they can take that to their printer and that way
Customize
there's,
it or-
and then just make the changes of date and location? Is there?
Like a
you-
template?
Yeah. That shows the font
That way,
size.
there's no discrepancy, this is what we gave you type of thing.
White background, black letters, 10 inches at the top, maybe it's 6 inches or 4.
Well, if you
Specify it.
have it laid out as on a PDF, they just hand it to their printer and boom, it gets done.
That way.
You think?
I think we could provide an example, but I would refrain from actually giving, like, putting the information on there and giving it to a property owner, because then the onus is now on the township. Right?
Okay.
But if you just gave them the pro forma layout, they could still take that to the vendor, and they can do
Yeah.
whatever they need to do.
Oh, no, I'm not saying for each job or each sign. I'm just saying an example or, you know, something that they can fill in their information and their dates and all that, but at least that way, you know, it's all the same, so.
We definitely could do an example, yes.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I can just see someone saying, well, I thought it was this way.
Right.
Okay, sounds good. We'll bring that back for March 26th.
Okay, and moving on to review the draft of our annual report to the Board of Trustees. And Lori, you want to walk us through that?
Certainly. So, as you'll recall, for some of the commissioners that have done this before, and for the new commissioners, the state does require that each planning commission in a municipality prepare a report of its yearly activities and submit it to its legislative body. So this is a report that's prepared on behalf of the planning commission. Tonight, we're to discuss it, make any adjustments, and then recommend it to the Board of Trustees, ultimately for receive and file. It's information sharing. And it describes the different projects and applications that have been undertaken in 2024, and then it also provides a little bit of guidance on some things to consider related to planning and zoning in this coming year in 2025. So some of these items that are listed in the report are required as part of this, are required by the state to include. So for instance, on page 2 here, we need to note that the number of times that the Planning Commission met, which was 17 over the course of last year, 4 of which were study sessions. The township is required to have at least 4 planning commission meetings a year by the state act, so you've well exceeded that. And then we also note if any of these were special meetings. The membership composition also needs to be detailed, so we have current membership, but we also gave thanks to Jim Barry and Gail Grieger for their time on the commission. And if you'd like to see anything change, please, please interrupt. Then on page 3, we detail the different applications, the date that they were heard by the Planning Commission. Or the date here represents the date that the decision was rendered. So some of these maybe had been discussed at multiple meetings or were introduced at a previous meeting, but this is the date if you were to go back in the meeting minutes and see what decisions were reached. So we list the special land use applications, which there were 5 last year, all approved with conditions. For site plans, there were a handful of these, and that includes some that were site plan extension requests. There were 5 rezoning applications proposed as well. And that details if they were subsequently approved or denied by the Board of Trustees, or if they never ultimately made it to the Board of Trustees, like the 4700 Ann Arbor Road, that conditional rezoning, the former Vic Tanny site. The applicant never submitted to go before the Board of Trustees. And they're actually coming back before the Planning Commission at the March 26th meeting, which I'll provide a little bit of information after this. We also detail out the cluster housing and planned unit development applications, the 3 different ones. For the personal flex warehouse, the St. John Towns on Sheldon Road, and then the Crest Haven cluster housing option on Canton Center. We also note just the different types of other reviews that is a byproduct of planning commission activity. So those are the landscape reviews and inspections that happen after site plans are approved. There were 21 of those this last year. Sign reviews, there were 13 total. Some of those are, of course, administrative, like for some of the industrial signs, et cetera, but 6 were reviewed by the Planning Commission as they fall within the ARC district, and those are listed there. There were also a series of administrative reviews, smaller projects that don't warrant Planning Commission review by the ordinance, 12 of those, and then 7 land division combinations that were actually approved. Are there any questions on that portion, the year in review?
Not a question, but more of a comment. On page 3, right? First off, I think this is very well written, okay? And this committee got a lot done last year, just to be commended. That pickleball site that's on Mass Street, right? They had their grand opening, I think it was on February 7th, right? I don't know if you guys ever note the fact, right? But the fact that it got approved last 3rd quarter and it was open within 6 months, I think it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
So,
they didn't have a lot to do.
And I'm not trying for the committee to its horn, but it's like, when you move that quick to get something done, most people aren't aware of it. That's an accomplishment, which should be highlighted, and if you want to add that, that was my 2 cents. I'd add when it opened up on the status, approved and opened within 6 months or 5 months, whatever the timeline was.
Yeah, because sometimes these things get approved and they just linger.
But it's up to the owner of the property, I mean, isn't it? I mean,
there's a
that's
demand,
good,
yeah.
the guy did that, but someone, well, I mean, that's just on the owner.
Laura, how does it get determined when they go to the BOT?
So we can still
Is
take
it
credit for
just
it.
like the supervisor
guess.
decide, or does the applicant decide?
Just like the Planning Commission has like a deadline date for packets and information, there's like the same thing with the supervisor's office, at least in the previous administration. And I would imagine that's how it will go moving forward as well. We've only had two projects go before the board so far in this year.
So if they put in for a meeting, it's like they'll get on that meeting if they have everything together.
If the supervisor's office decides that there is like adequate space on the agenda for it, yes. Sometimes the applicant may submit insufficient information. They also, for some of these, there's a fee required. If they don't pay that as well, then it can cause a delay. So there's a number of factors that go into it. Sometimes the attorney may request additional time to review if it's a PUD contract or such, if there's additional, revisions that are needed, so.
Okay, so it's not like 100% up to the applicant's control to be on an agenda?
Oh,
There's
no.
other factors?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So Bob, does your office typically look at applicants and make sure they're all up to date on taxes and lawsuits or anything else?
Yeah, I don't like it as an automatic practice, but I ought to. That's a good data point. I'll make it a point to do that.
I know it's been, you raised it and your predecessors from time to time, but,
Water
and I don't
bills and
always hear it
taxes.
every time, water, anything, okay.
Would that be at the PC level or at the BOT?
It should be at both. If they come for an application, I'll double check and make sure they're up to date. I don't know if we can use that as a factor to deny them, but
Well, wouldn't you require them to be up to date on all outstanding bills?
I could
Before
see that
any
at the
action was
board
taken?
level. I don't know about ours.
I don't know what the
I don't
township,
know.
I don't know what the township's policy is.
I don't know if we have a policy on that. We've informally We used to always, if somebody applied for a abatement, for an IFT, they, that, you know, that was a standard question, are they up to date on taxes and water, but it just hasn't been asked, but it should, before it gets on the agenda, it should. We can do that.
I would just caution that when the planning commission is evaluating a site plan or a special land use or a rezoning, right, the criteria for that are already spelled out in your ordinance.
Yeah, that's,
And those are the items that really should be followed. I think Kevin, welcome to ask that question of him at the next meeting, but I think the township attorney would also advise that you should follow your ordinance requirements
that
as
was
the
kind of my
criteria.
point.
The board maybe has greater latitude.
The board has the latitude to decide whether to put it on the agenda or not. And so the board could keep it off the agenda if they're not up to date. That's the power that we have, but I don't know about the planning commission.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting it for us, because I understand that could jade us, our
Right.
attitude toward an applicant. But the final decision on those matters rests with the Board of Trustees. So when we were talking about when would it appear on your agenda, that might be one of the criteria that would be used.
I'll ask Kevin what he thinks.
Any other questions, comments,
I just have
changes?
a question. Oh, go on. One question, on April 17th, cluster housing, PUD, the 72 residential townhouse at 44045, which is St. John's. I got the site map here, I'm just wondering, right, was there a color change that happened with that? Because for the life of me, I don't know where you could put them with all the holes that are on that golf course, but.
It's actually on Sheldon Road. I just-
On Sheldon, okay.
Yeah, it's something.
It's in back, yeah.
It's in the back,
Well,
okay.
yeah.
There's like a little access road back there now.
A 2-track.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you, that's all I want to know.
Yeah, it's-
Is this the town's, is this the
Correct.
Elks one?
Oh, that is the one that we we're just talking about at St. John's.
Oh, this is the St. John's one.
Yeah, this is the Sheldon Road.
Oh, they're 4 stories, okay.
it's actually-
That was their site render.
It goes this way, because their exit is going to be.
Anything else on those first 4 pages?
No?
No, it's very good. I would agree. It's a nice list. Looks pretty professional.
Thank you. So then on page 5 is where we talk about projects in 2025. And there's a couple different mentions on here. Some of these are carryover from last year. The first is to make some improvements to modernize the zoning ordinance. You'll note that in this 2024 recap, there is no mention of text amendments because none were completed last year. And it really is, your zoning ordinance is so important and it's a living document and it really needs constant attention and updates. So it would be really important, I think, to try to focus on a couple of these text amendments for 2025. Right-sizing parking, looking at landscape standards. This is something that the ELC, the Environmental Leadership Commission, has expressed interest in supporting, making sure that we have native plants, green stormwater infrastructure to reduce flooding and address climate change. There's been some hiccups with the Ann Arbor Road corridor and the C2 district. And the Ann Arbor Road office corridor and how relevant that zoning is. Consider some potential changes to the industrial district. And then, of course, the last 2 bullets here, the dark sky ordinance, which I think we will be working on this year and continue to look at least for commercial and industrial. And then perhaps some updated standards to facilitate more outdoor dining. That still is that, for instance, is a special land use, which is, I think practically, do you want to require a public hearing for someone who wants to do some outdoor seating at their restaurant, or is that something that could just be approved by the planning commission, or even administratively? So those are some, potential areas for revisions to the zoning ordinance this year. These aren't required, so nothing, by putting these projects on page 5, you're not tied to completing these, but these are recommendations from our perspective in applying the ordinance on a daily basis. In addition to the zoning ordinance, we have the joint meetings and training. We see a lot of communities, especially when there's new membership on the boards, to do like a joint training session in conjunction with their zoning board of appeals and their city councilor, their township board. Even if it's more of just like an informational sharing and kind of getting on the same page, those sessions can be really helpful. The last one was held on August 2021, so it's been quite a few years. I mean, a
Didn't
lot
go
has
so
changed.
well either, if I recall.
Yeah, we could probably facilitate that in a different manner.
Yeah.
But that's something that a lot of communities are doing. So that might be something to bring up to the Board of Trustees. And then lastly, the master plan update. So the township is due to update its master plan in full. And we provided some information in here regarding the amendment to the Michigan Planning Enabling Act last November. And then I sent out that email just to provide some additional background information on the Michigan Association of Planning's position and the exact wording of the bill itself. But basically, it requires that communities must include strategies to address a range of housing options that includes type, price point, affordability, ages, and other characteristics that serve, that meet, a variety of housing demands.
But how can we develop those strategies when we're pretty much built out for residential, and the last few residential developments have been pretty varied?
Well, I think that's something that you would explore as part of the master plan process. What are those opportunities? It may be more surgical than, it's not going to be a 40-acre development, right, anymore. That time has passed, so it's going to be more strategic, surgical infill developments, redevelopment of parcels.
Laura, I thank you for sending me and I guess the rest of you got this in your email, the actual wording of the House bill, number 5557. And I'm assuming I picked out the correct words here, but the words in the bill are not nearly as directive as this second paragraph would imply. The actual wording reads, a local unit of government may adopt, amend, and implement a master plan, ... includes, among other things, promotion of or adequate provision for one or more of the following. And then there's 9 different criteria that are listed. Number 9 reads, a range of housing types, costs, affordability, attainability, ages, and other characteristics, including single-family and multiple-family dwellings, to serve housing demands of a diverse population. To me, that is significantly less prescriptive and more flexible for a planning commission than the actual wording in this paragraph at the bottom of page 5, which might have come from the Michigan Association of Planners, I don't know, but to me, I think we would be better off to use the exact wording from the House bill, assuming I've picked it out correctly, than this more prescriptive and demanding paragraph on our plan. That's my view.
I think it's a best practice that the township all communities would consider offering a variety of housing options, right?
I agree, and we should, but I just think this paragraph here is very directive and telling us we must do all of this, whereas the House bill actually suggests that it's something that we need to consider, but it doesn't demand it.
Well, maybe must is not the right verb then.
Just from my perspective, I'd be more comfortable with pulling the exact words from the House bill that apply to this as opposed to this paragraph, which I think is overstates or is much more directive in terms of what the township must do with its master plan.
Maybe it would be helpful to include this information from the Association of Planning and then the bill directly with this, so that include the information from the Michigan Association of Planning and the bill directly, like that could be attached with this document so that the Board of Trustees could see everything. They would have the full picture.
It's just my view.
Well, I would agree that we would consider, I can't repeat what you just said, but that certainly that we develop a strategy and not using 9 criteria as outlined in this particular bill, rather than just, this seems more direct, like we have to do this. It seems stronger language than what would be required of us.
That was my reaction. It could be that I've misinterpreted the House bill wording, so, this needs another look.
Yeah, it is pretty strong. You're right. Pretty strongly worded.
It is, right? To Dennis's point, there's not a lot of land to go do a whole bunch of new things. So maybe it would help if we had an inventory of what's already been done, whether it's the number of apartment units or condos or single-family homes by square footage, not price point, right? There's some correlation, but I'd like to know what we have and what we're severely lacking based on what we have. And then maybe it guides the work for a master plan. Maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, and Tim, you had come up with something like that when we were discussing the
Yes.
Plymouth Walk. Maybe
Exactly.
you can just repeat that if you
Yeah,
can?
yeah.
So that newer commissioners are aware of it?
Okay. You want me to do, it's not something, I need to actually
Yeah.
show you
I
the document.
know, I know. Well,
But we need to do that anyway
Yeah,
as part of our master plan
right.
update.
We did
Yeah,
consider
we
those
did do
points,
that, yeah.
particularly with Plymouth
Yeah.
Walk, and we've been sensitive to it with this, what is it, Crest Haven now, where originally they were not going to include ranches or story and a halves, whatever you want to call those
Yeah.
masters on the first floor. Because we've heard numerous times, decades, that a lot of the senior folks here want to stay here, they're wanting to downsize, and, but they want something that is a little more age-friendly, primarily a ranch or
Sure.
master on the first floor. So Tim did come up with some documentation, some data, if you will. Not, I don't think it was, right to the units, but it was.
At the time, it was as near as we could
Yeah,
determine
as
it.
near as we
It's
could.
now about a year old.
Right.
But, we did go through that exercise, and this, to your point, particularly in the last several years, most of the activity here has been in multifamily and townhomes. So there is a wider variety of housing types in here than I think most people thought.
Right.
So, but yes, as part of the master plan update, that information or an updated version of it needs to be included.
Which
And
is-
again, it's market-driven.
Yeah. Right.
They know when these developers come in, just talking about residential now, they know what's going to sell and what's not going to sell.
Well, when the Toll Brother guy came in and spoke at the Board of Trustee meeting, it was late January, right? It was single-family homes, 17 or 19, they got a variance, which is great, 7 will be single-family. I'm cheering, I'm about ready to stand up and clap, and then it was in the high 700s, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Come on.
That's the reality.
Yeah, and it's because of the cost of the land and the market, and, boy, it'd be nice to have that.
Nothing you can do about that.
But I did a little research myself before this meeting and on affordability. And about 25% of the cost of a home is due because of government regulations. So if the government is really wanting to do affordability, then they need to look at some of those regulations. And this document here goes into licensing. So you need all these people to be licensed, but you could, they're talking about here about concrete folks.
Sure.
But then you look at drywallers, you don't have to have it. If you're putting asphalt, you don't need to be licensed, according to this document. So I think we need to kind of look at that, but,
Disagree with that one.
those are items, I point those out beyond a planning commissioner's control.
On this paragraph, Laura, I could draft a version that I would be more comfortable with. Would you like me to do that and forward it to yourself and the commission members?
I mean, I think if there's concern over how this is worded, I would just recommend that we change it. This means that Plymouth Township should include strategies, and then it reference the housing bill and MAP's website for further information. That way they have the full picture.
Yeah, should's a better word than must, but yeah.
I don't know that, well, I'm just thinking out loud, I'm not gonna do that.
I don't know, maybe those 9 strategies that you could put that in there.
Yeah, well, there's the way it reads, it's a system of transportation to lessen congestion,
yeah, it gets into
safety from fire and other dangers, light and air, healthful and convenient distribution of population, good civic design, public utilities such as sewage disposal, the use of resources in accordance with their character and adaptability, and then it lists a range of housing types.
Yeah, it might be better just say the diversity of housing types that would recognize affordability and lifestyle. You can come up with the wording.
Any other additions?
Yeah,
Again, you're not tied to this, right? It's not written in stone. It's just a recommendation. There can be other things that the commission decides it would like to undertake or not undertake in 2025 with the approval of the board and administration.
Article 26 on landscape standards, does that just apply to stormwater retention, or is it broader, like homeowners and businesses and so forth?
Article 26 would apply to any developments that require site plan review. So it would impact commercial and industrial developments as well as like Crest Haven, but not an individual residential property owner.
You might want to include that point when you present this to the board.
Okay.
I mean, I'd love to see language on trees. You're taking out 20 trees, you gotta put at least 20 back, something like that. And I get, the diameters might be smaller because you're planting new ones, right? But
There is wording on that in the township now. However, I don't believe it fully captures what our homeowners or our residents are envisioning in terms of retaining existing wooded sites on development. Which has been something I've been kind of probably overly outspoken about in the last couple of years.
and you
But
should be.
again, I would like to see that wording to that effect, to some extent, included in the master plan.
With metrics, so it can't get skirted or corners cut.
Yeah, yeah.
The only thing I want to add on master,
If you want, I can meet with you
Yeah,
offline
sure.
to
Let's
kind
do
of
that,
bring you up to
Tim.
date on
Okay.
what I was thinking.
the only thing I want to say on this master plan here, and I don't know whether you can or can't, but it'd be nice if we could say what you should do and what you shouldn't do, and I don't know if that crosses a line here, but, you don't want another landfill. You can say, okay, we don't have the land for it, granted, but, you probably don't want another racetrack, because the land is going to get reused to something else here. You probably don't want a strip club. I don't know what the 3rd, 4th, 5th, or 6th things are, what you don't want in Plymouth Township, but man, it's what makes Plymouth Plymouth, the fact that there isn't a bunch of wayward things here.
Well, you have to look to the ordinance to see what permitted uses are within zoning districts. That's, by law. So there are some things you can do and some things you can't. If it's a permitted use within that zoning district, then the planning commission does not have a lot of leeway as to whether you can approve it, deny it based on your own preference. I always use the example, if 28 people wanted to build coffee shops, 28 people could put in coffee shops because a coffee shop is a permitted use within the Ann Arbor Road corridor. And even though everybody would think that would be ludicrous, we don't drive the market. And 28 people could put in coffee shops.
So there's a limit on how far we can go. Okay.
Yeah, and you're
Lots of limits.
bound by the guardrails or the ordinance, zoning ordinance.
All right.
Yeah, we are quite limited, you know, people will come in and say, we have enough coffee shops or car washes. We don't
they
pick
do.
winners and losers.
Yeah, we do hear those comments.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's kind of up to the owner of the land what they want to do. I mean, we can't dictate everything, I
Right.
don't think.
Right, just because and that's what happened with, this was before your time, but one of the applications that's coming before us that Laura was talking about was a car wash. And there was a competitor in arguing and trying to present data that suggested we don't need another car wash because there's not a market to support this. And it was a competitor. And, too bad.
Yeah, right.
It's a free market.
Yeah. Yeah, eventually everybody gets their coffee and then someone goes out of business if it's oversaturated.
If someone goes out of business, that's okay. That's just the way, that's free market.
I think this is a good summary for the annual report.
Okay, thank you.
So are we okay with forwarding it on? Or do we want to look at it again next month?
Yeah, I think we should look at it one more time.
What I've learned here is that when we put something in writing, even though it's a suggestion, other people read it as this is not what we've decided. And I'm speaking here specifically about developers, but there's other people too. So I think we just need to be cautious about putting in things and saying it's only a suggestion, because it's really more than that in terms of how the public reads it.
Yeah, they could turn it against us in some way and say, well, this document says this. Okay.
But I'd say you're 95% of the way there,
Yeah.
Laura, so just,
Okay, sounds good. We'll bring it back in March.
Okay.
And then for the March meeting right now, I know I sent that email around. We do have an ARC sign on the agenda. There is the conditional rezoning application. They've adjusted their application for the 4700 Ann Arbor Road, the former Victani's site. So
which side is that?
the former Victani's,
Oh,
Applied
okay,
Fitness.
right, okay.
So
Big
because,
Canyon was a while ago.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because they've adjusted their application or their proposal, they will be having a new public hearing and coming before you on the 26th. The developer is also hosting an informational meeting, and you'll be getting an email about this, but it's going to be Thursday, March 13th, and it's going to be in this boardroom from 6 to 8. And this is a developer-led meeting, so this is not a township public hearing, but it's really just an opportunity for them to meet with the residents or business owners on Ann Arbor Road. They'd also like to extend the invite, of course, to the Planning Commission and the Board of Trustees to drop in and learn more about the project and what they're proposing. I'm not sure if we will be in attendance at that meeting or not.
What are they proposing?
They're proposing just a car wash now. No Starbucks.
Have an interesting plan that you'll see.
So we would need to properly notice that meeting, though, just in case there is a quorum by the commission and board. But we'll send out information about that meeting in either this week or early next week. And the updated voluntary list of conditions that they're offering as part of the rezoning and their new concept plan are available on the township's website. They are available at this moment for viewing, if you'd like to check them out. We also, I think, may have the site development plan for Cresthaven on the agenda. They are calling it Glenview now. So when you see that, it is still a reference to Cresthaven. I think we'll probably put that on the agenda, like formally known as
We already have a
Cresthaven.
Glenview though.
Yeah, on North Territorial, just
Yeah.
west of Farmer Garber's White House in Beacon Hill.
Or maybe it's Glen Haven.
Glen Haven.
Haven?
Yeah, I can't remember the exact name, but it's a different name than how they originally
Okay.
pitched Cresthaven. So knowing that those are kind of the big items on the agenda for the March 26th meeting, I wondered if the commission was interested in having Eric Geerlings from the ELC provide information about the battery energy storage systems, the BESS, or if you'd like to hold that till a future meeting.
That might not be good. It's hard to predict when you have a public hearing, how long those might go.
And-
Although it's helpful, I'm glad to hear that the applicant is going to have their own meeting to explain it to the public. Hopefully that will help alleviate any concerns that might be brought up by the residents. But I'd like to have some time for the commission to do a good Q&A with Eric and, have a good understanding of what's
Yeah, I
coming.
think a future meeting would be
Yeah.
better than that one.
Should we look at the April meeting then tentatively for maybe him to
Yeah.
present at? If that aligns with his schedule? Okay. Okay, that sounds good.
All right. Is that it from you?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anything else from the commission, comments?
I had a question. I saw in the Board of Trustees agenda that they went into closed session for SPARS and Northville Downs. Anything that we know about what happened, or?
I can't talk about what goes
Okay,
on in
I didn't know
closed
if,
session.
no, I didn't know if there was like a
Oh.
decision made that was public after that. I wasn't,
There wasn't, SPARS was not, oh yeah, it was. There was a short
okay. I
conversation about
don't want to
that.
know what was like
Yeah, I
there,
don't
but
think
I
we
just,
should
if a
touch it.
decision was made or it came to a consensus. or-
No, it was an update.
Okay. All right, just curious if anything was public, but,
No, if it, in the future, if it is, I'll make sure that I bring it to this meeting
okay. Thanks,
and
Bob.
let you know, yeah. Or send an email or something.
I had one comment, right, and it gets back to, page 4, that 44045 5 Mile Road. This is the St. John's area, right, that golf course, the hash. So if there's 72 townhomes in there, and this was dated December 24th, maybe the township map has already been updated. If it has, then strike it from the records. If not, I'd like to at least show where those are going, right, on that property, because they took 27 holes and made it a really nice 18. So they probably are using the outer perimeters, I'm guessing.
For the townhomes?
Yeah.
It's not even part of that.
No, it's right off of
It's
Sheldon.
not part of it.
Yeah, it should be.
It's right on Sheldon,
It's where that,
One's foundation and one's.
there's a street
right near where the Hilton Gardens is. That's
That
north.
Sharana, is that it?
Let's
Sharna?
see, here's the new
Is
map.
it the blue?
What's that?
It actually
This
doesn't.
mid-rise?
No,
It should be right in there,
it's
right?
up here. It's up.
Yeah, it's
along
right
the
in
road.
here.
It's where Hillside.
This
or where
road,
the,
whatever
golf
this
course
road
goes right
is,
into it.
goes right into it. The
Yeah.
road goes right into it. Do you
But
have
right
that?
now, it's showing,
Yeah.
oh, it's showing as PUD. Okay, so it's correct.
This,
Okay, let me get my.
that's the whole golf course
Yeah.
there.
See this road here?
Yeah.
That road's gonna connect into it. It's over in this area right here. There's no hole in that area.
No,
So the holes are,
not there.
No, they're not there.
Or way up here.
okay, they moved.
And then wraps. They haven't moved it.
Okay, so it's accurate. All right, thank you, I stand corrected.
Yeah.
Thanks for correcting me.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's not correcting you, just
Clarifying.
Clarifying
Yeah,
it.
clarifying.
Answering your question.
PUD is, it's under that.
anything else from anyone?
Yeah, Folks, I've raised the subject of preparing for the master plan update a number of times in prior meetings. I'm getting really nervous and jerky at this point. We have a lot of work to do this year. We need to update the master plan. We need to conduct a public hearing, incorporate feedback. We need to take a proposal to the Board of Trustees and then finally adopt a plan. It's now mid-February, and I still haven't seen a work plan that's going to get us there. So I know I think the last time I raised this, I was told that, Laura, you all wanted to meet with Chuck and kind of get his perspective and so forth. We need to move forward on this. I'm really getting concerned that the year is going by and we're going to be not in a position to turn out a quality piece of work. So point number one, I want to raise that concern again and really suggest to us as a board that we need to see a work plan that's going to get us to the result. The second point is that I think there are a couple things that we can do without having to wait for a formal master plan. One of them is that Commissioner Barberino has put together a list of 9 sites that are potential updates that we would recommend on the master plan, changing the zoning of. I've looked at all those. I agree with all of them. Number 10, we've talked about the Northville Road corridor as a potential change. And then I also proposed 2 additional sites. One is currently industrial, one is currently Ann Arbor Road corridor, that I think we could look at moving to include a second option. So it would say industrial or multifamily and AARC or multifamily. I think both of these sites could really help us with our effort to continue to look at the middle missing housing perspective without taking negative actions about all of the things that make Plymouth Township great as it is. So maybe something we could do is designate 2 or 3 of us to go and actually do a drive around all those properties and form a recommendation that we can bring to the planning commission as a total about those pieces of land. And that is something that I think we could do on our own at this point. And I want to come back to you, Kendra, in a minute on that one. The second thing we could do is that we've already heard from the Environmental Leadership Commission, and a couple of other groups have come forward with suggestions for the master plan update. And out of the presentation I did last year on the age-friendly assessment, I had a number of recommendations that we could consider. We could put together a list that incorporates every single one of those recommendations and begin to look at that and decide which ones we think are potential candidates to be included in the master plan update and which other ones either don't belong or maybe are too ambitious. So those are 2 things I think we could get busy on now or in the very near future that would help us. Having said that, I want to come back to you, Kendra. Anything you want to add on the subject about going around and looking at the individual pieces of land that we potentially would include in the master plan update?
Not sure about a couple of commissioners making a decision, because that's what all 7 of us are here for.
What I meant to say was that we would bring a recommendation to the commission. Because I wouldn't be comfortable with 2 of us making that decision either. Or we could rent a bus and take all of us around. I mean, that would probably be the ideal. I don't know how
I think
realistic
that
that
would be a
is.
better fit. Also, we have new commissioners. So also as a way of learning.
Learning experience.
Educational, and that discussion to actually, to have a bus, we did that back.
It's
been 15 years, 15 or 20 years.
Careful
We
about
called it the
Open Meetings Act, though. If there's
We
a quorum.
did it.
We
We did
had it
it. The BOT
posted.
was there too.
I know, that was back in
Yeah.
2004 or 5.
Something, we called it the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Right.
I was the ugly. He was the good.
It was really beneficial though to we could always have a list of sites that everyone went to look at on their own and then discuss them,
That could be awesome.
like in detail, and also as an educational thing to say, why is this an issue? Like right now, we're we have an application coming up next month, and we have no new master plan to say what we want that area of the township to look like. And it would be really nice if we did have that master plan, and we could say, okay, we've recently really thought this through and really analyzed it and discussed it and researched it and listened to the public, and this is what the public wants, you know, in that part of our township, but we don't have that. And it would be really good to get the master plan done.
Bob, if we, as a group, went around and looked at this in a bus, if we're not making decisions in that drive around,
Deliberating, yeah.
that's not
When
public.
we did the bus tours, we did them twice or maybe 3 times, it was posted. And some of the trustees also came along because they were invited. I don't know if
Yeah.
there was a quorum of trustees or not, I
I
don't
think there was
remember.
extra room on the bus,
There was
too.
extra room.
We did have some residents.
I don't remember residents.
Yeah, there was more than one bus, though.
More than
I
one
think there
bus.
wasn't there more
We
than
had
one?
the school bus
The school
from
bus thing.
the Plymouth
that was
Christian
it.
Academy.
Oh, I thought we had the senior transportation.
We had that
bus.
was on another one, but then I think that one was only for the commission, and then we said we should have the trustees come.
Yeah.
And that's when we got the bigger bus.
Yeah, because I know I remember one where the Board of Trustees was with us.
Yeah.
And maybe some from the CBA, too.
Would
Well,
it,
that could be, yes.
well, as a first step, then, would it be helpful for us just to put together the list of the properties you had, the 2 properties I'm suggesting in the Northville, and give it at least to the planning commission members, so we can begin to think about it?
Yeah, that'd be very helpful.
Maybe if you had, you could maybe do this on Google Maps. We'll have a study session and put those pictures up or see where, where they are in relation to other uses or buildings, and then we can talk about it. And if you, it sounds like you two might have already reflected on it quite a bit, and so you may want to lead that discussion, but then it's open for discussion amongst all of us for opinions and concerns or agreements. So we could do something
Might be
like that.
jumping in the middle of the master plan process that you have.
I mean, have you heard anything more about the master
Yeah.
plan? That seems to be the,
I think all that sounds great if the commission is interested in pursuing those activities. I'm still waiting on firm direction from the administration on where they would like us to go. I think it's very close. The state, we've confirmed with the state that the funding is still available if the administration would like to receive it, the grant, to conduct these activities and conduct, thorough public engagement. So that's promising. I don't have a final answer yet.
so what motivation would be for the state to give us this money? Would they want something in return, or?
They want us to do the plan, right?
Correct, update the plan, and update the plan with a focus of housing.
There, an implied quid pro quo, if we take the money, that we need to reflect the Michigan Association of Planners agenda on items like missing middle housing and the like?
It's not so much the Michigan Association of Planning, but it's the statewide housing plan. Does the community amplify and support the state's direction on housing?
Oh,
That was the plan that I had emailed out. The state of Michigan's housing plan.
little social engineering going on there?
Yeah, again,
I think so.
I think we need to proceed with caution here because I suspect there are, I don't know, I'm just anticipating that there might be requirements there that might not be in the best interest of Plymouth Township at this point in time. So,
That decision is with the administration, so I know they're taking it seriously. And as soon as we have an update for you, we want to share it and move forward.
So I think we need direction there of what the final decision would be, but I think your suggestion of looking at these sites is a good way to still continue some efforts on the master plan, because that sort of sits, it's a portion of it, and it's, I don't know, philosophical, I can't think of the right word right now, but something that we might want
To me,
to.
it's the
So
part
do
that
you
we
want to
can,
do the bus tour, or do you want to do a study session?
It's
on
up
this?
to you, I don't know how complicated it is to get the bus.
Actually, I think,
Have a list.
yeah, I think
mean,
that, I think
drive
the
around.
We can
sites
drive
are
around
pretty,
ourselves.
they're pretty self-explanatory. I mean, I don't think there's
Yeah.
a lot on this that's gonna really require much discussion. I think
Right.
it's pretty self-evident. So if we put together the list, put together show the sites on the zoning map and show the Google thing, we could probably bring that in, and that get us a long way there without
because
having to
that's,
do the right.
to me, those are the sites, like the hot sites in the township. And then that's
Yeah.
where the developers are gonna come in with plans.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the part where we can actually do something with the
Right.
master plan.
But if we
Because
just
a
have
lot of this
list
stuff will
and
just sit in
please
the plan.
So what would
drive
And we
you,
by
can't.
so would one of
before
you
this meeting.
give us the list of the addresses, or how?
Yeah.
How
Yeah,
long
I
take
can work
over
with
an
you.
hour to
Yeah.
drive
Why
around?
don't
You can
we-
email,
And then
I'll
we
find my
all-
list
we all
and
have
see
an
if I wanna
hour.
add to it,
Okay,
and then you can get your list.
And then we
Put
ship
something
it out to
together.
people to look at, and
Yeah, just
and
email
then
it
we
out.
have the
just
study
saying, hey.
session.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably
think
something as
that's
big as
fine.
the corner of, you know,
Yeah.
whatever one.
Sheldon and Ann Arbor Road. just
Right,
to
something
pick-
like that,
Yeah.
like the northeast corner of
Yeah.
whatever.
Right,
You know, but
We-
just,
yeah.
you can do a drive around in probably 2 hours and
Oh,
See us
max,
all,
max, yeah. You can get around this township.
okay, well, so Kendra and I will
Yeah.
take the lead on that.
Okay,
And then putting together a list of all the recommendations so far, I think that's also something that we should look at. Just start building the list of all of the recommendations that have come in from the people that have presented to us, and also, you know, the things that we've discussed ourselves.
Is some of this changing zoning, or is it just requirements within a certain zoning category?
It
the
varies.
master plan, so it's saying what we want this area to look like to give an example.
It's a vision.
Oh, okay.
If you look at Ann Arbor
Yeah.
Road between Hagerty and the freeway on the north side, it's zoned for the most part office. Does that still work? Do we still think that that's a good idea? Should that be something else? Should it be, you know, mixed in with commercial?
Yeah,
What should go on there? Another example is Ann Arbor Road at McClumpha, the northwest corner is basically empty. We've had applications come in for multifamily, for townhouses. What do we want that corner to look like? There's a church, there's a funeral home, school, cluster development, I think on the southeast corner. So what should that look like? Because north of there, there's large houses on large lots going towards the township park. So what makes sense to go there?
Have you involved Laura at all in any of this to get her opinion, or?
I think I emailed this list when we first were doing the master plan, maybe just over a year ago, or maybe it was when we were working on it back in 2020. It's been a while. Oh, you know where it is? It's on, we did that survey. We did the survey, and then all the commissioners had a place to put comments,
Oh,
and that's where I entered it. So I guess it's not anonymous anymore. It was me.
I knew it was you all along.
yeah, we should run these by Laura too, and
Yeah.
see what her thoughts are.
Oh, yes, I mean, that's kind of a
But just
given.
to, like, be
That's a
thinking
given,
about-
but yes, yes.
All right.
All right, well, once you pull it together and see how much time it takes, I mean, we could do a study session, we're probably looking more like April, or
That would be
maybe
good
even May, it just depends on what happens.
After
in the
April
next-
15th.
Yeah, okay.
preferably.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, after
Preferably.
April 15th.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments from anybody? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn at 8:50?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adjourn at 8:50.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Barberina and supported by Commissioner, I want to say Itzel, and it's not.
Pikes, Ryan Pikes, it's easy.
Pikes, yeah, I know. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries, we're adjourned.
Thank you.